products to the intended customers. And this would help eliminate the challenges associated with them being able to, have a battery last long enough for them to deliver those goods to the customers. So very obviously breakthrough and different way of looking at how the distribution of product will be made. It combines actually two breakthrough methods at once, really. The idea that there will be drones in the sky delivering packages, combined with the idea that there'll be a mobile blimp inventory system housing those packages, so the drones can go to and from the blimp and deliver the packages. So again, another example of taking a problem and rethinking that problem in a new and different way to come up with a kind of a paradigm shifting solution. So hopefully that's kind of gotten your minds around where and how far I believe supply chain, business operating folks, ERP and finance folks need to take their imagination in order to be successful in the future. The old ways of doing business are likely not going to succeed in the future. So changing, your company's identity overall might be necessary to succeed. So as I get into kind of the meat of the presentation here, I want you to think about a few things. One is, from a supply chain perspective at least, think about how supply chain is viewed in your organization and why it's viewed that way, and how you might be able to change that view. So traditionally, supply chain is thought of as, what are the costs associated with operating my business, and then how do I save on those costs and become more efficient? And that's kind of because of the way it's been deployed, again, that kind of this siloed functional based approach to supply chain. When you look at an end-to-end operating model business approach, what you find is the drive of supply chain is really to enable growth and revenue. So this has been talked about for a long time. A lot of people in and around ERP and supply chain have talked about how being more efficient and having a flexible supply chain can enable growth, but never before has it been talked about as much as it is today. Never before, because of consumer demand, has it been more real than it is now. To me, this is really the differentiator of success for companies, because it's going to become the case where a lot of companies can produce the same product and offer that to their consumers. But the question is, how do they get it there? How do they make it? How do they adapt it and create better products? And whoever does that the most efficient, best way, whoever's most innovative and efficient in terms of service, not in terms of costs, to their consumers, will be the winners. And the folks who are really focused on just operating within the four walls of the organization are going to have challenges. Hopefully that makes sense to hopefully all of you. So that's one kind of major theme you're going to see throughout the presentation. Another one is this idea that supply chain is aligning to a business operating model. So don't just think about changing supply chain or ERP or core operating business model just to fulfill a particular function. Think about fundamentally aligning how your business operates to your systems. So if you're moving to an omni-channel type of distribution approach and you have multiple core order management systems and consumers are ordering through various different physical electronic mechanisms, think about how your systems would be built ideally to support that, instead of trying to figure out how you can retrofit and patch your systems to fulfill and manage that business. Because in the long term, the best approach is to look at it from end to end and how you're going to support your business operating model. And you're going to hear it's a journey. So the building blocks of this end-to-end approach I'm going to talk about aren't things that happen overnight. It takes some time to complete this journey. The journey actually is something that will go on kind of at infinitum. As new technologies, new processes, new consumer demands come to the marketplace, you'll need to adapt your processes and systems and people. But framework is kind of the key here. What's your underlying approach is the key. Is it flexible and adaptable? And can you alter it without disrupting your business, and does it align to your business operating model? So, the journey is something that's going to take some time. For our part, for Oracle's part, we can certainly help you with that journey. We have different webinars, webcasts, and journey mapping sessions that can help customers figure out the best way to get there. And the last one is just think differently about technology and deployment. Building one overarching approach to your business operating model is, again, kind of fundamentally where the business is moving. A functional, siloed approach to solving problems is approaches that I rarely hear them anymore. I usually hear, how do I either replace my ERP, or how do I migrate off of my current ERP to a more flexible ERP system that's completely integrated with my supply chain processes, people, and systems. And, from an Oracle perspective, we are on that journey ourselves. And the journey itself is something that we've been working on probably for 3 to 5 years in advance of kind of where the market is today. And we suspect that we're going to be there, in the very near future. Okay, so the why change? So end-to-end, outside-in is a new supply chain model. So I'll talk about what that means here in the next few slides, but overall get kind of level set on the idea that end-to-end means, everything from the idea of generating new ideas for products and receiving orders to making the products for those customers, moving them, and then analyzing that entire process and closing the loop and doing it again. So that it's an end-to-end view of your operations. And then the outside in is really this idea that it used to be that forecasts and demand signals and the best way to operate and be efficient was all derived from within the four walls, internal data, historical data. Let's look at past history and arrive at what we think our best plan will be to operate on a plan basis moving forward for the future. With the advent of information and technology and cell phones and mobile consumers and digital information being so prevalent, it's now the case that real-time demand signals, real-time information about what your customers want, what they're buying, what they're even just looking at, regardless of buying it, but they're interested in it. All that information can be fed back to your business operations, so that you understand what your best plan is at the moment. So this idea of plans and planning horizons at best is shrinking. So forecasting and planning is great. We need it. Every company needs to have a plan. But at the same time, the flexibility to adapt and receive real-time consumer inputs and signals so that you can change and execute your plan more efficiently are what we're calling this outside in. We're now taking a consumer-based, demand-based view of how we're operating the business, which is something that companies always wanted to do. It was just that information and technology really didn't support it as well as it does today. And frankly, it'll get even more. There'll be even more information available, and companies will be able to adapt even faster. So this traditional integrated supply chain operating model, I won't spend a lot of time here. It's a fairly complex slide, but in essence, the reality was in the past you had this supply-driven operating model, right? You work with your suppliers, develop a plan. Here's the product I think I need. Here's the time frame I think I need them in. Here's the different colors and sizes. And you would build plans on, okay, how am I going to distribute those products and services using my algorithms and my planning systems to figure out where to put inventory. So when they did order product, I had the product pretty close by. This process still happens today, right? Almost all companies still have this process. I would argue this process is a push process, really requires a heavy emphasis on what happened in the past versus taking in the market dynamics. So when you look at the integrated supply chain driven operating model. There's still gaps, right? So that whole market arrow I had on the previous slide is kind of denoted here on the left as this kind of true demand, right? And this is the information that companies always wanted, but it was really challenging to get. I can remember working at Kraft Foods, and at the time the CIO there would bring me into his office. I was just right out of school, but I happened to be working at headquarters there, and we would go over kind of the different analysis I was doing as a logistics engineer for Kraft, and he'd always be asking me how promotions were running and what's the overall connection between our supply for fresh fruit from the West Coast into the East Coast and our production facilities, and was it the right amount, the right time, was anything going bad? And that data was nearly impossible for me to get. I would be making phone calls and getting faxes, writing it down, doing math and Lotus notes, trying to create information for him that he could understand so we could operate better. So think about that. I mean, that was 1992-ish. So a fairly long time ago, but I would argue that a lot of companies haven't moved as quickly as the technology and the information that's available has moved. I think a lot of companies have information today that's incredibly valuable, but they haven't figured out how to tap into it. And that's where we are, right? We have this market information now that's coming back into the businesses. And this is what I'm talking about with this end-to-end, this paradigm shift that's happening really quickly right in front of our eyes. With all that information now that's available to us, a lot of companies are trying to retrofit that information into their current frameworks. And I would argue that's not going to work. You need to completely look at your core ERP combined with your supply chain and look at an end-to-end approach that strategically maps to your operating model. So the question is, how do you bridge this gap? The big red question mark in the middle of my screen now, between this true demand, how I'm getting information about products moving off of shelves and consumer demand, to what has been as traditionally within the four walls, inside out view of supply chain and how you're going to optimize your business. And then on a more strategic basis, taking data about demand and try and plan better the next year or the next 6 months. How do I bridge that gap so this becomes a more end-to-end seamless operating model? So, kind of before I dive into how do we get there, some data that I think is telling is this is the Gartner report about supply chain initiatives, asking leading supply chain practitioners. I think there was about 357 different practitioners who replied to this particular piece of research. And what strikes me is the three top ones, the three top things that companies are looking to accomplish, which is supply chain visibility and transparency, which tells me, where are my products, where's my inventory, how do I share information with consumers or suppliers, just really a flexible method to see where things are in one screen at all times. Frankly, that's been talked about since the late 90s when I was doing implementations at some of my clients at that time. BI and analytics. So this is the idea that they know they have data. Customers, supply chain professionals, finance folks know they have data to make better decisions. They just can't sort it out, or it's not connected, or they're worried it's not really accurate. So this idea that there's business intelligence and analytics needs doesn't surprise me at all. And then S&OP, integrated business planning. So for those of you who don't know S&OP and business planning, it's really this idea that you created a singular operating model that connects the different business functions that surround your business operating model, whether it's finance or operations or your marketing or your suppliers. It links that entire process together. So the business operates from a sales perspective in concert with your operations. So it's a very unique approach, and I'll talk a little bit about S&OP for those of you who might not be too familiar with that term. But those top three priorities are, to me, really a endorsement and a cry for help of sorts from companies, basically saying, okay, I need assistance getting these three things done. It's a top business priority, but most companies don't know how to do it. I mean, they're pretty large aspirational things, and things that are not possible without an end-to-end approach. Okay, so new capabilities. The end-to-end supply chain is the business operating model. So, I've been in supply chain 25 plus years, so I may be biased, but I would say that the supply chains of the future are the business operating models. It used to be a business could operate, have strategy in different meetings, not really talk to supply chain folks. It's an impossibility today. It used to be that, when I worked at Del Monte, different promotions and customer deals were set up with our customers, and I would get, really no advance warning of when those trade promotions were going to happen, what new customers were signing up, what shortages were happening, or what inventory was available in what locations in advance. I just had to react. That's not the way it's going to be. So, as the sales and marketing operations at companies try and think of new promotions or launch new products, the supply chain people are in that room making sure that the supply chain network that's set up can support it, and they're aware of it. So yes, they can be efficient, but again, forget about cost and efficiencies necessarily. They are making sure that the customer is going to get what the customer expects. So they're going to be able to grow the business and drive new revenue. So the end-to-end market-driven operating model. So this is kind of the crux of what I've been talking about from a end-to-end operating model perspective. The overall change here is that there's a influx of information coming from the market today. So when you deploy a strategy that connects your suppliers all the way to your customers, which is what a lot of companies are doing today, it allows them to take all the information and insights from those customers and from kind of aggregate customers, if you have distributors or retail locations, and send in true sensing and shaping information back into your kind of traditional supply chain approach. So it becomes really a living and breathing type of entity where true demand signals are coming back into your plans and your supply chain network so that you can operate in the most efficient way. So this is it's what we call the outside in approach. It is taking outside market driven information about what's happening, and that's sensing and shaping what were plans that were in place to fulfill customers and consumers in particular places. It's an extremely powerful idea, and it's kind of the root of how I recommend customers who talk to me for advice. It's the route at which I tell them on how they should do their strategic planning, is to make sure that from a overall business perspective, this idea of consumer demand and aggregate demand is able to be received and interpreted so that the overall system can fulfill, innovate products, and deliver the right products at the right time to their customers. So, so from a theoretical perspective, a lot of my customers get this. It says, John, this is exactly where we need to be. We have a ton of new omni-channel initiatives. We're always introducing new products, more so than we ever did before. We're a manufacturer. We're moving from a pure manufacturing type of company. We're thinking about being a service company. We can offer direct shipments via different, ERP and operating models and different mobile systems that we're developing. So, we're trying to reimagine ourselves, and this model fits that where we're headed. Okay, that's great, right? So then we say, well, all right, let's get going. Let's talk about how we do it. And, we kind of use this slide just to generally talk about the business drivers and why this change is happening: efficiencies, growth, risk mitigation, innovation. And I usually will talk to my clients about this growth and innovation, kind of the two catty corner major ones there. So efficiencies have always been talked about from businesses. Every business wants to be efficient. That's been a function and a driving business lever for a long time. this idea of innovation and growth are kind of different. And to touch on risk mitigation, again, that's been an area that most companies have talked about, especially for their finance and business operations. Again, growth and innovation have kind of been like marketing, sales areas. Again, so from my perspective, this is a supply chain area now as well. And then we're getting to talk about S&OP. Supply chain needs to be in a room with the marketing and sales people, because the supply chain folks typically will have really good ideas about innovating products, so that the linkage between the product innovation is tied to supply chain distribution, or vice versa, so that you're delivering a new and innovative product in a more efficient way with less risk, and the entire business has better margins. And on the growth perspective, offering products in different areas, sometimes the sales and operations folks might think, well, we're not really familiar with this geographic region of the world. How will we ever get product there? There's no way we'd be able to get product there. And they just don't even know that it would be possible in almost all cases today for the supply chain group at the company to fulfill product really anywhere, using partners and different mechanisms to do that. So almost no part of the world is off limits in terms of where a company could sell. So this movement towards growth and innovation is really kind of at that core of end-to-end, outside in type of view of how your operation should work from a ERP and supply chain perspective. And so companies are, eager to start. Laura Siri did a research piece here, and kind of the net of this research piece. And Laura's been around for a long time, and she knows her stuff in supply chain. I've probably known Laura since mid '90s. So the crux of this is, so there's a lot of information on this slide, but the basic conclusion of this information is that there's a fundamental disconnect between what the business can actually do and what it needs, and what the understanding of the executive team business is. So the boxes in orange here on this slide are all about the delta, the gap for improvement. So what's working well, and then the respondents graded what's working well, and then where is there room for improvement, and the respondents graded, okay, here's an area for improvement. So this where there's big areas for improvement come from the cross-functional alignment piece, come from ability to access and use data, and this organizational change management stuff. What's interesting is that from an executive team perspective and visibility perspective, they graded it's working well fairly high. And if you remember from a few slides ago, that was one of the core needs, is this supply chain visibility. So some of the managers kind of see it as, well, it's working pretty well, but then from an executive standpoint, they would not grade it as working well. So there's this disconnect between how the business actually functions and how the view of it functioning works. It's, how could you have supply chain visibility if change management is a problem? Or how can you have supply chain visibility if cross-functional alignment is a challenge? And the ability to access and use data is a big challenge. So herein lies kind of this paradigm of perception and reality of where the business needs to go. So a quick question for you: can your business deal with this change as a highly fragmented combination of heterogeneous, complex business processes, external partners, siloed structures, different architectures, data, and technologies? Hopefully at this point, you all understand what I'm leading towards here, is that this, that ball of yarn at the, that picture I showed you on my second or third slide of him trying to pull this one string out. Supply chains are incredibly complex. Your operating model is complex. The way your systems have been set up is complex. Moving forward, to function efficiently, if you want to be successful in the long term, to be able to leverage business intelligence and analytics and move to the next level of, a end-to-end platform for visibility, so you can really succeed in the future. The old way of doing things won't work, and your old systems won't work. This patchwork type of mentality is something that needs really a leader and a champion within your organization to change, but is really the way forward for all organizations. So the way to figure out whether or not you're a good candidate and where you are and how you should start and what you should do next, which is kind of what I'm going to now transition into, is, what are your capabilities and readiness levels, and do you measure them, and do you know how to improve them? So most companies today don't do those readiness levels assessments, not really sure where they are. They don't really benchmark themselves against other companies or leaders in the industry. There's been various maturity models built in the past. This is the one that Oracle kind of subscribes to, and is basically a market standard at this point. It's a 5-stage maturity-based journey model. Gartner uses this, and a lot of analysts and other market pundits use this. We subscribe to it as well. And basically what this journey model is aspiring to is this orchestrated value and innovation approach to operations, whether that's your finance and order management systems or whether it's your supply chain systems. It really should be one view of the business. So that's your kind of stage 5. And then, the stage 1 is the most the most immature approach and model, where it's kind of a reactive, you're using historic, accidental information type of approach to figure out what you should do in the future. When we do our assessments, most companies fall into like the 2.4, 2.8 range when we go through our list of criteria to assess where they are. So almost no one's in that one category. Most companies have moved away from that just purely from a technology standpoint. They've gotten better at kind of, improvement projects within the company at a baseline. And then this balanced mix of integrated functional excellence in stage 3 is the next one, where they're actually different systems and people and processes are communicating with each other. And then some have moved to stage 4. There are progressive companies who are in the stage 4 collaborate value discovery stage, where it's, kind of this demand-driven, integrated end-to-end processes approach. And then this orchestrated approach really is just when you're now leveraging analytics and BI and intelligence across the entire supply chain, kind of in a circular way, so that information and data is interpreted, so your next decision is better than your last. And this is where, we're moving and trying to move all of our customers to this orchestration approach. And it's really the basis for how we design our systems so that they can work in an orchestrated way. And this slide's been around for a long time too. This kind of is a way for you to look at how this 5-stage maps to your own businesses. If you're using standard reports and ad hoc reports, queries and drill downs, you're probably at a less mature phase of your journey to a stage 5 supply chain. And what you really want to get to is this best case scenario, this optimization, and not optimization maybe in the sense that a lot of supply chain folks would think about it. Optimization in a sense of thinking about not what's necessarily just best right now, but what's best in the future, and what options do I have to improve over what the system is telling me is the best option right now. So without getting into too much detail, that traditionally the optimization engines only solve for what problems they knew. In other words, there were constraints put in a system. It would look at all that data, give you a suggested response. New optimization techniques are coming to market. A lot of that's based upon better and faster hardware that can now look at flexing those constraints and giving you options. So you might be able to save $3,000 if you don't air freight a particular shipment to a particular customer because we've offered that customer a discount on price. He's accepted it. Therefore, we're going to ship it via vessel versus air freighting it to them. So the customer saves money, business saves money, the margin increases, and it's a better scenario for everyone. But that's really an example I just gave you that's not available today. A human being would have to intervene and conduct that type of business process to see if that was something that the parties wanted to agree to. Where Oracle is building adaptive intelligent, you'll probably, if you want to Google adaptive intelligent applications in Oracle after this webcast, there's a number of applications we're bringing to market around the Internet of Things and how we believe machines can speak to each other and then make assessments on potential changes in the business that'll benefit everyone. And communicate those to different parties so they can make decisions. So, things are changing rapidly, and this goes back to kind of my baseline point of, the technology and data and information that's going to be available is moving at a hyper speed. Leveling your business in terms of your ERP and supply chains and aligning them to your business operating model and what it's going to be is critical for you to succeed. So, this is another kind of depiction of where companies can find value. So I get a lot of questions typically about how do I get there and what do I do first. So to me, there's kind of two fundamental places you can start. One is you can start at your core. Your core is, okay, I have my ERP and my supply chain. I want to transform my business. It's a strategic change for me. How do I create new products, get consumer demands, innovate, and then execute and link all of that into one system? So that's kind of the complete transformation core end-to-end supply chain initiative. Then the other one is this innovate at the edge approach. So innovating at the edge is really taking what still is a strategic piece of your business, purposely optimizing that piece of your business, your functional or horizontal, and then building on top of that with more strategic implementations and more strategic innovations to your operating model that maps that edge. So an example might be transportation. Transportation is kind of a horizontal core business function, but you can innovate transportation at the edge, meaning you can implement a system and processes that support your suppliers, your distribution centers, your retail stores, your manufacturing facilities, and your customers, all in one system. So it's supporting the entire business. It is a transformational change, but at the transportation level. So that's the edge piece of it. It's on the edge of kind of your core strategy. So you can do that first because it's still, as you roll out other applications, can still fit into a complete strategic alignment of your business. So innovating at the edge is a approach that a lot of our customers take, and then I would say almost an equal number of our customers are now looking at a complete ERP, SCM transformational approach. A lot of times with a subsidiary type of play initially, they'll start with a section of their business, not rework their entire business, but a transformational move nonetheless. And then the other two areas, this consolidation and hosting, really is just a buying time. It's not really the reason why you should be changing. Divisional modernization is a tactical change. We have a lot. There's a lot of companies who are looking at doing this divisional modernization as a part of a complete transformation. So this is the piece where you're taking a subsidiary and moving towards complete transformation. Okay, so how to get there. So there's let's build the whole slide here. This is kind of just a different way of looking at how you can make the journey from this business function approach to an end-to-end approach to an enterprise transformational approach. And to me, there's no right or wrong way to do this, other than making sure that you have a strategy when you start. Don't start your movement towards an end-to-end outside-in strategy and operating model without understanding how you believe you'll get there. Your plan will change, I promise you that. But at least have a map that says if our business is designed to fulfill consumer demand and service customers in this particular way, and here's what we believe our future is, how would our systems look and how would our people be allocated and what processes will we use to do that? Map that out first. Again, Oracle can help you do that if you like. And then start moving towards that, either in a transformational way. Okay, let's start from the core. We're going to start with a new ERP system and we're going to build around that core transformation, or start at the edge and make sure that those edge implementations and processes and people are designed and built in a way that will support a core change later if necessary. But really, no right approach here. You can move towards this enterprise transformation from left to right, in my opinion, or you can start from right and move left, where I'm gonna redesign everything. And as I go through that redesign, it's going to require me to figure out what my true end-to-end processes are and how I want my business functions to operate within the end-to-end enterprise transformation. So kind of some core foundational pieces of this are visibility and analytics, and they're kind of core to the end-to-end process, whether you call it a planning process or an operating process. Here's a slide of the sales and operating model that I talked about, this integrated business planning S&OP model. And really what this is saying is, you're meeting operations and sales and marketing are meeting in the middle here with business and finance and supply chain and procurement. These four entities are actually in a room together. There's different companies who have kind of war rooms set up with big screens. They have agreed to analytics. They're all sharing information either on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And what that does, it makes sure the entire business is aligned from an operational standpoint to what the goals are for the business and how they're going to get there. So you have these supply side type of folks in the room talking about what supply and operational challenges and opportunities exist with the sales and marketing people who are then balancing those opportunities and challenges with the business and finance and supply chain and procurement folks. So it's this kind of process, people, and technology approach, and end-to-end is kind of the core here of how the business can operate better. There's lots of examples of how companies are moving to this sales and operational planning model and what it means. I would recommend anyone who has read some of these different approaches and how this actually works in practice. Highly recommend you take a read of some papers that exist out there. You can just search the web to find some, and then talk to some companies that are doing this. There's lots of companies that Oracle can refer you to that have adopted some of these models. This S&OP approach is kind of a subset, but a large subset of an end-to-end transformational business operating model. So the overarching end-to-end cloud supply chain architecture and journey is really around these three core layers: this level 1 visibility, 2 analytics, and 3 execution. This slide and framework turns out to be the core framework and slide that we can use and companies use to break down what do we have to do. Well, the best way to think about this is, okay, how do I get the end-to-end value, network capability, and development? So that bottom arrow, what do I need to do? So this real-time visibility is a good place to start figuring out, okay, baseline, our data's got to be right. It has to be able to be shared amongst different systems. So it has to, the integration has to be there if there's different systems. And then you need these analytics to help respond to visibility. And analytics, not in the sense of a report or a dashboard. Yes, you need those, but you also need engines helping do optimization and have intelligence in them to make suggestions. And then obviously the execution piece is, as the engine is making these suggestions and optimizing your business, how do I actually operate my business? How do I execute that plan? How do I execute what I need to do right now to get my customer the products that they need? So, I've talked about, you thinking about things in a different way, how the business operating model has changed, the different 5 stages in the outside-in approach to supply chain, and how you might get there with kind of 3 core layers. So a lot of people then ask me, okay, well, how's cloud involved in all that? And really, cloud's a deployment model. So the cloud in and of itself will not solve your problems. It's not going to get you to a transformational state of business and operations. But without a cloud deployment approach, you can't be successful either, because really once in an on-premise approach, the emphasis on innovation and movement and flexibility gets lost, in my opinion and experience, because companies then find ways to build complex integrations and adaptations and customizations to their product. And then when it's time to change from a business perspective or systems perspective, it's too difficult for the company to do it. So Cloud is a deployment model and not going to change your business, but cloud is also a requirement for success. I wouldn't recommend buying an on-premise solution today to start my strategic end-to-end business operating model journey. I would look for cloud applications. Innovation is faster, deployment is quicker. You have monthly payments. There's just too many benefits to cloud to think that another approach is better. And then this slide is really my way of talking about looking at things from a strategic perspective. So really, what this study concluded is from basically what's hard is good. It's your mother or your father said anything worth getting is going to be difficult, kind of thing. That's kind of what this slide found when it concluded its study, was that when there's kind of an intense IT deployment, meaning involved a lot of people and there were different changes and really changed the standards that IT took and involved creating new integrations and implementing new systems. And then from a management practice, on the left side there, the more process changes there were and the more challenge there was to the norm, you ended up in that top right quadrant where there was about 20% more benefit for companies when they really pushed how the IT deployment was done, in addition to how much business process changes there were. So sure, you can have changes if you just changed IT. It's like a 2% change. You can have benefits if you change your business processes, maybe with a little bit of IT, and get 8%. But really, the real value is when both of those things are done in concert. You do an end-to-end supply chain and operating model change while you're looking at how your systems support your business. So kind of to wrap up here, the main conclusion is step one, plot your supply chain journey to the end-to-end business operating model. How does my business operation map to my overall supply chain processes, operating and finance processes? And then the same question for your systems. How do my financials and ordering systems map to my business operating model? And then how do my supply chain systems do that as well? And ideally, then you're saying, okay, how do I create an end-to-end, outside-in view of my business, and then build a framework around that strategic direction to be successful in the future? So, engage your supply chain leadership today. A lot of folks say, well, I can't get any support from different executives at the company. My number one suggestion there is develop analytics and think about analytics in a new and different way, and report those analytics to the business leaders at your company. And that will tend to put you on the spotlight, but it will get you visibility so that funds and support for this type of transformation can be had. So, surface the driving business forces and capabilities, identify your 4 to 6 supply chain segments of what you want to measure, how you want to measure them. Build a path to the cloud. Again, Oracle can help you if you don't know where to start there. There's plenty of different service providers, consulting companies that are really, really good at this, that can also help you create a map. And those maps, don't think of a engagement being a year type of strategic analysis. It doesn't take that long anymore. Reduce the complexity of technology, architect into a single end-to-end approach. It's going to sound and look more complex than it is initially, because some of it is just where supply chain and operating folks have grown up, so to speak. They're looking for integrations and complexity in multiple systems. It doesn't have to be that way. So reduce your complexity by going end to end, and lead and manage the change strategically top down. So you need to execute and deliver, but the biggest challenge I typically see is buy-in up front. You need to get executive buy-in and kind of energy and excitement in the business around doing this. There tends to be a stopgap approach to using the existing systems and processes and people to transform the business. it contradicts itself, right? You can't use what you have today and then be transformational at the same time. You need to rethink everything with a strategic plan and then execute. And really, to me, at least from the companies I deal with almost daily, it's table stakes. You need to rethink your operating models to be successful in the future. It's really an exciting time in operations and supply chain. So with that, I think I'm at the top of the hour and right on time. That concludes my presentation today. I want to thank everybody for joining. It's been a enjoyable morning for me. I love to talk about supply chain. If there's any other questions or any feedback you have, feel free to send it through the chat mechanism or send it directly to the administrator of the webinar, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. It's got a question about distribution of slides. And yes, we will distribute slides. If you want to use those slides, feel free. And if there's any other questions for here for another minute or two, I can answer them live. It doesn't look like I have any other. Oh, what's the quickest way I can move to end to end? So, moving to end is a strategic decision for your company. The quickest way is really, I believe, to partner with folks who do it all the time. So Oracle will be a great company to partner with. There's obviously other companies that have technology and or services that can help you. But the most rapid way is really partner with a interested party, whether it's a technology or service provider, and develop that map, and then decide from the map of, okay, this is what our operating model looks like, and here's how it would map to an end-to-end, outside-in supply chain approach. And then figure out if you want to start at the edge or you want to start transformational. They're to me, again, kind of the two core decisions. Okay, I'm being told here we're out of time. Thank you again for joining this webcast today. I've enjoyed myself. Hopefully you've found some value from it, and I will talk to everyone soon. Thanks.